A few months ago, when Irene was recertifying her CPAN, she called to verify the contact hours she would receive for this exciting research project she had just completed and presented. In discussing the details of this project, I immediately thought about our coaches would benefit from this information because you are in positions to assist nurses with different generational learning styles to study for the CPAN and CAPA exams. So I'm going to turn the meeting over to Irene so she can introduce herself and begin her presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Irene Casada, and I'm welcome, first of all, and thank you for participating. Can you all hear me? I hope so. All right. I want to start with, we literally interact every single day, whether it be work, play, or at school, with different generations. And I'm here today to help you understand the different generations, how to coach them, to understand their learning preferences, and what strategies and resources that you can implement. Oh, why is this not working? Okay. All right. So who am I? Well, I'm going to tell you first and foremost, I identify as a baby boomer. And I'm many things to many people. And each role is important to me, but I'm most identified with being a certified nurse and an ongoing investor in my own education. I love our profession and I'm very committed to it. So with that being said, I think it's important to canvas other sides of yourself. So here's a couple of things that I like to do on my own when I'm not at school or working. I love to read, I love to bake, and I love to garden. So a little bit more about me. I have 33 years of clinical experience. The bulk of my career has been in the PACU and critical care. A few years ago, I made a lateral move to imaging services, and now I take care of people undergoing radiology procedures. I'm also recently graduated with my bachelor's in nursing and went on to pursue a master's in education. And my goal is to educate in an academic context. And right now, my immediate work environment includes people of similar ages and experience. And there are times, as I'm sure you all can relate, that we have to partner with, younger nurses, new graduates. And sometimes that can be a little challenging. Having said that, I also am in class with people of various ages. I'm also a mother to 2 millennials and 1 Generation Z. And often I find that there is a disconnect in understanding what motivates my kids. So that is what kind of got me interested in this topic when last semester in grad school, I had to come up with a critical issue that nurse educators face. So I immediately thought about generational differences. And I have to say that I felt it was a nice way to bridge the gap with the younger nurses at work, my own kids, and as well as keeping, it was an investment in my future as a nurse educator. So the objectives that I want to present today for you all is I want to help you all understand the different generations first and foremost. I want you to understand the learning styles, the strategies, and the ABPANC resources that you can recommend to the people that you coach and mentor for the certification exam. So now, why is generational knowledge so important? Well, I think in the capacity of a coach, you have having knowledge about the preferred learning styles and how to engage the people that you're mentoring, and having awareness of the people, of their needs, of the people you're coaching and their needs, is just going to keep you, it's an investment in you. It keeps you engaged, it keeps your learner engaged, because you have to realize the learner that you're coaching today is a key stakeholder in this whole process. So for you to have an understanding of their generation, their characteristics, their core values, how they learn, it's going to make for a positive experience for both you and the person that you're mentoring. So I thought this was a cute little cartoon because it really speaks to two different generations. We can hear the same thing, but we may walk away with a different perception or an understanding of what is being presented. And that, I think, is really the essence of the generational differences that we see. So to be an effective coach, from my research, I found that you need to be meaningful, supportive, creative, flexible. You've got to be current. You need to have technology skills. And the most important thing is, honestly, knowing your audience, okay? And while a coach you're not there to instruct and teach knowledge, because the people you're coaching, they already have the knowledge, or you're here to provide the resources, support, and guide them on their way as they prepare for the certification exam. So the people that you're going to be coaching are baby boomers, Generation X, Millennials, and Xennials. I'm going to talk about Generation Z, but I don't think you're going to be coaching them. And the other thing I want to mention is that each generation has specific learning needs, and knowing who you coach will help you fine-tune the coaching that you deliver, okay? It has to be relevant and individually designed for it to be meaningful and for you to be as effective as you can be. So a critical issue, that I found with my research is that nurse educators, coaches, you have to understand the generations and their learning styles. You also have to really avoid bias, and whatever strategies you use, they have to be evidence-based. So there's 3 determinants of learning, okay? And they're kind of crucial to anyone that you decide to coach, okay? Or teach. So determinants of learning is, you have to identify the learning needs of your audience or the individual you're coaching. You also have to assess their willingness to learn, because if they don't want to learn, it's not going to really turn out very well. You also have to understand their learning style, all right? As coaches, you have to keep in mind that, like I said before, the learner is the key stakeholder in this whole process. We have to know how they best learn, all right? We have to rethink design and embrace new ideas and innovation. So here's a slide that presents all the generations. Now, you will not be teaching traditionalists, and you will probably not be teaching Generation Zs, but you will see baby boomers, Generation Xers, Millennials, and Xennials in your time as a coach. And I'm going to be speaking about each generation. I'm going to be talking a little bit about their characteristics, their preferred learning styles, what strategies they might respond to, and what ABPANC resources you can suggest for them. All right? So I think this is kind of a fun slide. The current audience here is more than half are baby boomers. We have the next largest portion are our Generation Xers, and we have a small amount of Xennials and Millennials, and we have 9.1% that aren't sure where they align. So I'm hoping that by the end of this presentation, the 9.1% will have a better idea where they might fit. And if you don't, that's okay too. All right, so I'm going to begin with traditionalists, and I think it's important to introduce them. They were born between 1922 and 1946. They were called the silent generation because they were children and individuals that basically grew up being seen and not heard. The thing that I want to say about them is these are some of their core characteristics. They have a very sound work ethic. They're very dedicated, value community. They're team players. They're worth mentioning because, number one, they are people I've worked alongside of. They are since retired, but they have precepted me and ultimately influenced me as a nurse, all right? And more importantly, they are also the individuals who have influenced and raised baby boomers, which will be the next generation that I will introduce. So here's a slide about baby boomers. They were born between 1940 and 1964. My bullets, are some of the characteristics, and then the graphic displays even more. Baby boomers, are hardworking, they're independent, they follow through on any task that you give them. They have drive, they have passion, they like research, they like, details, they're resourceful. There's somebody you don't mind teaching, because they will respond to everything that you give them, okay? One thing that, comes up, I found a lot in my research, is that baby boomers were typically described as living to work. And you'll see why that's important in a few minutes. So this slide by Johnson, this quote rather by Johnson, baby boomers process information by wanting to see and hear information. And as a baby boomer, I can totally relate to this. So baby boomers, their learning preferences are typically, they like lectures, they like a blackboard, they like handouts, a textbook, and frequently memorization was a way to, master concepts and knowledge. So the way you as a coach can coach a baby boomer would be to encourage study groups, whether they're in person or virtual. Give them a case study that they can dissect and pull apart. Give them Jopan articles that are relevant to a concept that they're learning at the moment. Give them independent work because they're fine with that, and they'll respond to webinars. The ABPANC resources that you can provide or suggest to your baby boomer would give them that study reference list. Give them a printed question of the week, give them a study tips brochure, and encourage them to view webinars. The study reference list is especially important to the baby boomer because it aligns with their preference to having a book and a text and information they can highlight and resource back, and validate their information and knowledge. And again, webinars kind of mimic the lecture that baby boomers seem to respond to. Generation X is the next generation that I want to talk about. They were born between 1965 and 1980, and you'll hear me speak of them throughout the presentation as Gen Xers, okay? Now, before I go into their characteristics, I just want to share that they were the first generation to be kind of called latchkey kids, if you are familiar with that. And that comes from, they usually had, two parents that were working, or they came from a single parent home and often had to come home after school and they were home alone. So because of that, they are resourceful, they're very independent, they're adaptable, practical, they value their freedom and they're capable of responsibility. They're very goal-oriented and they are very tech savvy. So the learning preferences for a Gen Xer is they like structure. They like short lectures. They're fine with group work. They like projects. They like their independence, and they like to have fun while they're doing it all. So as a coach, you could approach a Gen Xer, give them a defined assignment, give them bullet points, give them feedback, give them a small group activity with a case study that they can perhaps discuss, give them self-paced work, and incorporate some type of game or fun to, meet their preference of having fun while learning. The ABPANC resource that you could suggest for the Gen Xer would be a question of the week, the certification app, encourage using the study app, and the 12-week study plan is definitely something that would appeal to the Gen Xer simply because it aligns with that structure that they like. Millennials, that's the next generation we're going to talk about. They were born in the late 80s to 2000. They're also known as Generation Y. And the bullets, as well as the graphic, really tell the story of millennials. They're very assertive, they're very, very confident, civic-minded, impartial, optimistic. They're innovative, ambitious. They want fairness in everything. They can be part of a team. They can be a little demanding. They're very technically adept. They have a high level of social connectedness. And the interesting about them, they are very much, they want life in balance and they work to live. They'll do their job, but they also, their life is very, very, very important. Their outside activities. So the learning preferences for a millennial is They like an informal setting, but they like structure. They like it to be collaborative. They want to know exactly what they have to know, nothing more, nothing less. They want it to be very relevant, okay? They like things that, are visually stimulating, sound. They like things that they can touch and do. They like entertainment while they're learning. Anything electronic will definitely appeal to them. And they definitely want feedback. And the reason for the feedback is typically because millennials were raised with very over-involved parents. So they're used to a lot of stroking and support and a lot of encouragement. So as a coach, you might want to incorporate or encourage group activities where you have a study group that meets in person or online. You want to implement storytelling, role-playing, case studies. They will be happy to maybe act out, play out, simulation, electronic gaming. Social media is a great platform. This is growing in education, its use. Millennials will respond to this. And of course, taking that personal interest is really going to speak volumes for your effectiveness as a coach for a millennial. And I just want to mention something about electronic gaming. My research says that, it's not research to be a better coaching method when compared with other methods, but it does enhance the engagement of the person using it, and it may lead to better retention of knowledge. So it's something to keep in mind with a millennial. The ABPANC resources you could share and suggest to a millennial would be to engage on social media with the question of the week, have them make use of the study app and the certification app as well. All right, you have to realize this generation they have very heavy, significant internet presence, and these resources will really draw them in and keep them engaged and committed to their preparation for the exam. Xennials is the next generation. And they are a generation they're born at the end of one and the beginning of another. So the late 70s and the early 80s. Sometimes they're called cuspers, the sandwich generation, or a micro generation. And more recently, I found the term middle child. They often have overlapping qualities of both the Gen Xer and the millennials, and are typically, a lot in my research I found, they were described as having an analog childhood and a digital adulthood. They're the individual who, played in a playground as a child and had one landline phone at home. However, as time went on, they easily adapted to, social media and the devices that we have today. All right. They, are a generation that was really exposed to the old and the new and really can bounce between both. So these are a couple of characteristics that describe Xennials. Tenacious, they're negotiating, independent, adaptable, communicative, optimistic, yet some can be cynical. They're analytical and they appreciate challenges. I found in my research that Xennials are considered to be great peacemakers and very strong mediators and excellent communicators. And it's said that they're probably the best at communicating because they grew up at a time when communication was a little limited. So in the learning preferences for a Xennial, honestly, they're probably the easiest generation to coach because anything that you were to put in front of them, they would be able to respond to. The lecture will appeal to them. A group project is appealing. Actually applying knowledge or a concept or doing something with simulation will be fine. And they embrace technology. So as a coach, you can give them bullets, you can give them webinars, you can give them case studies. They're fine with the group work and they can certainly navigate through social media. So anything really will appeal to a Xennial. And the same goes for the ABPANC resources for the Xennial. They will openly engage with the question of the week on social media. They will make use of the study app, the certification app, and the 12-week study plan as well will give them the structure should they feel they need it. Generation Z is an interesting generation. They are born between 1997 and 2013. And what's interesting about them is, while they're also known as Gen Techs, iGen, and Post-Gen, as you see here, they are the one generation that has been raised exclusively with technology. So they're very smart, they're very collaborative, they have so much sophistication and knowledge when it comes to technology. They're incredibly connected globally. And because of that, they're used to speed and efficiency in anything that they do with learning or reading, or any bit of knowledge. They can multitask. I often think of a Generation Z as if you can look at your computer and you have 10 tabs open. That is their brain multitasking 10 things all at once. It's pretty incredible what they can do. The thing about Generation Z, they're like Millennials, where they like balance with life. They're kind of a little bit laid back and informal. But the one thing with Generation Z is that they lack the confidence that Millennials have. And I'm still trying to find that in my research, why that is so, but they lack the confidence. They're actually a lot more cautious and a little bit less of a risk taker than a Millennial. This quote by Adamson I found was very telling when speaking about a Generation Z. They're defined as growing up in a virtual cloud of technology with infinite sources of informational and digital interactions that have changed the way they think, communicate, and learn. And I think that really speaks about how this generation has literally grown up online, and they don't know the world without the internet. So the preferences for a Generation Z, their learning preferences, that is, they like independence, they're fine with discussions, they are fine with something that's visually stimulating. Of course, if there's technology or, a social learning environment, they're apt to respond very well to that. So as strategies, you're going to want to give this individual self-paced work, case studies that perhaps they can, discuss online, a web-based tutorial, tablet readings, electronic flashcards, interactive textbooks are becoming very popular. This generation loves that. YouTube and social media. Now, the one thing too I want to say about Generation Z is the oldest Generation Z right now is age 22, and I think it's highly unlikely that they will be sitting for the certification exam and require coaching right now. And these coaching strategies speak to Generation Z right now. So we don't know how they're going to be as an adult learner. We have to see how they grow, what they experience in life, and what the world is like by the time they are that adult learner, to really know how best to meet their needs as a coach. So social media is a great tool. It's a great resource. It's a way to disseminate information very quickly. It makes the study effort a lot more personable and collaborative. I think it's something that is also very much embraced by any generation. Virtual resources are another platform that are very popular. There's a variety of online platforms. There is Skype, Google, Hangout, and Zoom are a few. And they're helpful for those who are studying as well as the people who are coaching individuals, okay? It's a way to increase interaction, promote engagement, keep people involved, committed, while offering flexibility and convenience. To the left here is the Doodle app. It's a free tool that was introduced to me that mentors and mentees can use, perhaps to schedule time together when they need to have, a mentoring moment, if you will, okay? It's also helpful for anyone working on a group project, a way to kind of, get together and sync, your research and your work. So it's something else to think about. Using Google for coaching, I have to tell you, this is a wonderful resource. I've made use of this through my schooling. Google Drive is a way to produce documents, slides, tables, diagrams, anything that you want. It immediately stores it every 5 seconds. You have access to it wherever you have a computer available. You never have to download anything to a thumb drive or worry about carrying your thumb drive with you. You can share whatever document or slide you're working on with a group if you're doing a group project. And whoever you share it with, you can actually all work on it at the same time and collaborate and live edit all at once. Using Facebook for coaching is another useful tool. You know, Facebook is a great resource. It's a way to provide instant support and feedback. You know, you can create your own certification community or group on Facebook and share your ABPANC content, share announcements, provide assistance and encouragement. In addition, if you need privacy, you can make use of Facebook Messenger. One thing I too want to mention about Facebook before I get into Instagram is that Facebook is probably something that would be used more by baby boomers, your Gen Xers, and maybe your Xennials. While Instagram for coaching, I think Millennials, some Xennials maybe, and Generation Z will definitely reach out for this. This is a little bit for the younger generation, if you will. And using Instagram for coaching, I think, is useful because it's another platform to help inspire and guide and coach those that you're coaching. For instance, you can inspire motivation by, you know, posting a quote or an image that maybe, you know, somebody needs. Okay, you can provide a hashtag that, you know, gives a quick tip on how to study for something, and you now have engaged people on Instagram and created followers. All right, you can encourage participation through whatever it is that you post on coaching on Instagram, and by adding a success story or with a complimentary picture, it's a way to share what was worked for you, and it will reach somebody. Maybe one person, maybe 10 people, but it will reach somebody. So while I was doing my research, I was often asked by people, where are the generations today? How old are they? So I just put this down because I thought it might be kind of interesting for you all. And maybe for the 9.1% that weren't sure where they all fit, maybe this might help you kind of, you know, refine your decision, if you will. So one final strategy for all is that there's no one right style. Okay, I think as a coach, you have to provide a menu of learning activities. You have to have options. I think you have to understand your audience, understand their learning preferences, and customize that coaching style to meet their needs and preferences. I think it's important as a coach to ask those you're coaching, you know, what helps you learn, you know, and I think you have to listen to that. And as you listen and implement the strategies, you have to really be authentic and transparent. I think that will just promote engagement of the person that you're coaching. This is a quote I'm going to end with. Students learn more when the teaching method is consistent with their learning styles, yet gain additional insight when occasionally pushed beyond their comfort level with alternative teaching methods. So the key takeaways I'd like for you all to leave with is it's important to consider the determinants of learning when you coach. Again, identify the audience's needs, you know, are they willing to learn, and what is their style of learning, okay? I think I think we all know technology is a second language to many of the younger generations, and I think it's just going to get bigger and better. So we all have to embrace it and really learn it, okay? In my research, I found case studies work for every generation. So I think that's something that's safe. If you were to implement, it would appeal to every single generation. And while electronic learning methods are here, I think they're here to stay, and they're just going to get bigger and better. You know, while they do facilitate engagement, I think you have to remember, you have to promote traditional learning methods. They all have value. So I was also asked to share how I prepared for my CPAN, and I took mine about 9 years ago or so. And what I did was I used what was familiar to me and how I learned best, okay? So I, you know, bought the textbook. I read the core curriculum from cover to cover. I took notes. I made charts and diagrams. I had a study group. There were 9 of us that were studying. We made flashcards. We had an anesthesiologist who would give us lectures. We also had guest speakers. Different doctors would come in to talk about pulmonary, cardiac, bones, you name it, okay? And we did tons and tons of practice exams. But the thing that I wanted to share is that if I were taking the CPAN in 2019, I would still do what was familiar to me because it's worked for me. But I would definitely make use of the ABPANC resources because I think the 12-week plan is fantastic. I think the apps are helpful, they're useful. It's just another way to stay engaged and committed. So my final reflection on this whole project, from my research paper that I did for grad school, for the presentation that I gave, and for the presentation that we had to refine a little bit so that it was geared towards ABPANC, is I think I've learned to be very open and appreciative of the different generations. You know, I may not agree, but I appreciate who they are and where they're coming from. You know, I think it's important to embrace technology. Like I said, it's here to stay, and we have to grow with it as it grows. I think it's important as a professional and an educator to seek challenges. And I think as a coach, a mentor, an educator, you know, you're giving support to those that you're teaching or mentoring. But I think it's also, you have to realize when you might need support yourself, and it's the best way you can grow and evolve. And that concludes my lecture. So if anyone has any questions, I would love to hear from you all or hear about your experiences.
Hi, Ray, this is Zelda. I was going to talk to the group. If anyone has any questions that they want, just unmute yourself and ask the question, or if you have any comments on the presentation, if you could please just give us your feedback. The floor is open. We have a couple of more minutes that we can take any comments anyone wants to share.
I do have a question, Zelda. This is Leslie Alexander from Arizona, and Irene, that was just a fabulous presentation.
Thank you.
Yes, just fabulous, and really what I think I've been needing all along. I was trying to see which generation I'm bordering between two generations, and definitely the structure that you've just given really helps clarify for me how I can be a better coach. And I can see why maybe I haven't been as successful. So my question is, did you design for like a questionnaire that you would give to potential coachees or coachees that sign up with you so that you can learn without being offensive, sort of, you know, their age and learning styles and things like that, or is that something that we would just kind of put together on our own?
I think that's actually a really great idea. I think that I think it's good to I think put that out to answer for yourself, and then pose those questions to the audience that you're going to be coaching, and kind of see where you meet in the middle, if you will. I think that's a really great idea.
And is it okay to use some of your points from your presentation to say that, you know, we've learned different learning styles based on your generation?
Absolutely. That I think it's important. You know, listen, that's the one thing that we're in nursing I've learned is that, you know, we don't know everything and we have to share information, you know, and when we know, we grow, you know, so by all means, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was exactly what I needed.
Oh, I'm so happy. That is like the best thing to hear. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really great, Leslie. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wanted to ask a question if anyone wanted to answer is, did any of you have any assumptions about the generations before you listened to this?
This This is Christella Thompson from Baltimore, Maryland.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I work with a lot of millennials
Okay.
who identified them perfectly. Um, so I pretty much did have a general idea of the different characteristics
Uh-huh.
of each of the generations, as you will.
Uh-huh. Have any of you experienced any differences in the way the generations learn? Do you ever find that it's a struggle or an obstacle?
Yes, I definitely do. And I think it's because, as you said in the beginning, we need to bridge the gap between the generations, so that all generations have an appreciation for where we've all been and
Right.
where we're coming from.
Right.
As I tend to feel sometimes maybe a wall that goes up, between myself and the younger generation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I have to say, I agree with you. I will admit that early on, I would find I didn't really like them, and that's so unfair to say, because who am I to say that? But I will say my research really opened my eyes. And like I said earlier, may not agree, but it's okay. I don't have to agree. It's not going to change the way I nurse, or it will only change perhaps the way that I mentor or that I'll teach something, because I do feel that if you really engage who you're teaching, who you're mentoring, you're going to grab them in, you're going to reel them in. And it's going to be a really good experience because they're going to feel understood. And I think you all can relate that when you feel understood, it's the best feeling, and then it just pushes you to want to learn even more and do better, So that's just what I think about that.
Well, I think it really, the different generations are different cultures, and since cultural diversity is so important when we're dealing with our patients, it's the same with our colleagues. And so, yes, having an understanding for their preferences and definitely will help bridge us.
I think so. I do see a difference. I see a lot more tolerance, a lot more patience. And it's funny because I've given, my work, this was several months in the making, and I shared it with my colleagues at work, and it's actually helped them as well, so it's been kind of neat.
That's great.
Yeah. Have any of you used the ABPANC resources or recommended them to anybody?
Which resources?
The ABPANC resources?
Yes.
And what do you think? Do you like anyone more than the other?
Well, what I'm finding in the nurses that, I usually speak to them before, we have a group that gets together at work when they're, if they're interested in certifying. And, after introducing some of the applications or resources from ABPANC, and then talking to them after they test, I've been asking, what have been some of the, what do you think was really helpful to you? And definitely, I was looking at your list, the practice exams, of course, the question of the week, and the reference list, which of course, is so important, and the flashcards.
Yeah. And they're all great tools, and I think you're incorporating a little bit of something for everyone. And I think that was, again, going back to the whole, how this whole thing came about was what's a critical issue for nurse educators, and it's being able to educate different generations. So if you have if you have a nice customized menu of different things, you're sure to have something for everyone. And I think that's important. You don't want to leave anybody out.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if by introducing them to everything that's available before identifying what their style is, I'm wondering if that's overwhelming.
I agree. I think you have to know your audience before you introduce anything, because you want to give a customized menu that's appropriate for the generation. Because yes, I do think it would be otherwise overwhelming.
Irene, this is Christella Thompson again. I became certified about 2 years ago.
Okay,
And
congratulations.
Thank you. I found the question of the week was very, very helpful.
Really? Oh, that's good to hear.
Also, our anesthesiologist actually would pretty much do the same thing, but they were more related to anesthesia,
Okay.
which would present questions and gave you a multiple choice and gave you the reason behind it. So that was very helpful, and I think
sounds like it is, yeah.
It helped me pass the exam. So I have spoken with my coworkers, and they asked about how I went about studying for the certification, and I definitely suggest question of the week because it was very helpful.
Oh, I think the question of the week, it promotes and pushes that critical thinking component, which you need, is so necessary,
Yes, yes. And
I think that's great.
And I know that I agree we would not be teaching Generation Z, but I think you made a comment about they lack self-confidence. Did I hear that correctly?
That would be the Generation Z. That I don't think they would be sitting for the exam. They don't have the confidence that Millennials do.
Correct. And even though I know we're not going to be teaching them, I just wanted to ask you a question about them. Do you think because they are so involved in technology that they don't know how to communicate with real individuals?
Absolutely. Yeah. And in my research, I found that as smart as Generation Zs are, they are socially a little awkward. And they actually have anxiety about how to openly communicate in person to person. They're so much more comfortable behind the screen.
Yes.
So yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay. And how did you become a coach?
I'm not a coach.
Oh, okay.
You know what it is? I had started that. I'm in grad school, and I had a research project that I had to research a critical issue for nurse educators. I'm getting a master's in nursing education, and the critical issue that I identified was I just simply looked around my classroom, and we have a host of so many different generations right in my classroom, and I said, my gosh, it must be so hard for a teacher to teach so many different generations. How do you meet everyone's needs? Right. And I will say that, like, when I started going back to school for my bachelor's, I really didn't know much about online work, submitting an assignment online. I was terrified. I remember we had interactive textbooks, and I used to say, why do we have this? I don't like this. Just give me my textbook. Give me what I'm used to. But I gradually learned to embrace it, and actually I kind of like it. And it's just, it just helps you learn, in a different way. And that's what made me understand that teachers have to have something for everyone, because not everyone has the same preferences and learning styles. So that's how I became interested in it. And I did this research project and a presentation for school. And then when I was putting my CEUs in for the Learning Builder, I had called Zelda and I said, is this acceptable? And then she said this would be very interesting to present. And that's how I came to presenting it.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Thank you. So my one question is the group of people who didn't I know what they identified with. Has anyone been able to come to a decision? That 9.1%? I would love to know if anyone was able to come to a decision, or if they could relate to one particular generation or not. Are
you asking, Irene, how we identify ourselves?
Yeah, like, there's 9.1% that didn't know if they were a millennial or, that's what I mean. So if anyone wasn't sure, did this presentation help them kind of find their place or not yet? Just curious.
I pretty much knew what my place was.
I think I can see how this did help me, because I'm in the very last year of baby boomers, which I just found out in this past year. I had no idea I was a baby boomer. But because I am, I guess I can kind of scoot back and forth between generations, and this really makes a lot of sense. And just in general, in relating to my children, a 17-year-old and a 21-year-old, this is very helpful. So again, bravo.
I found it helped me with my kids a lot.
Yes, I have 3 daughters, so actually I have 2 millennials. I have a grandson that would fall in the Generation Z, and I have one that's Generation X. So they definitely keep me bouncing between numerous, which is very good, because I am learning things every day that I never thought I'd have to do. So it's a beautiful thing.
I hear you. Well, good.
Irene, this is Ursula from Pittsburgh. Just as a side note, what I have found really helped engage the millennials and younger generation was allowing them to teach me at the same time, as far as like all the technology that they have and they know. I will tell them, show me, teach me. And it just sort of really gets them engaged. You don't seem as threatening to them as you would otherwise when you're just trying, I'm your coach and I'm your teacher. But when you're both learning from each other, I think it just makes for a really good mutual relationship.
I agree completely. And I think too, when you ask them to teach you, show you, like you said, it just gives them that support and feedback that they do like, and it's validating for them. So I totally agree with you on that.
I mean, I haven't found it with my grandson because he's a Xennial, Generation Z. And it's like, well, he'll say, Nana, don't you know how to do that on your phone? And I'm like, no, show me.
No, I hear you. But yeah, you're right. And again, I think it's that when you, like I said, I have this open appreciation for the different generations now. And I think that it's, and again, you as a professional, we never stop learning. We never, you never stop growing. So if you can, so what if we don't have egos where we can't learn from someone younger than us? We don't, I know I don't feel threatened. I welcome it. It's okay. I'm human and I can openly admit if I don't know something, teach me, so I think that's a great point. Thank you.
Welcome.
Irene, do you have any suggestions on what you would do when someone doesn't pass the test and they are pretty deflated and everything?
Well, it's funny that you asked that, Deborah, because out of the group of us, there were 9 of us, I think, that were studying together, and one girl did not pass. And, it was, we felt her pain because we were so, we were such a group. We sat together for months and months and studied together. And we were like a little sisterhood, if you will. And, so when she didn't pass, we felt terrible for her. And you know what? We said, when you're ready, we'll help you. And we didn't have like set times, but we each devoted some time to this young lady. And, I gave her all my notes. I gave her my flashcards. I would, we would sit and we'd chat about it. Other people would do the same thing. And she took it the second time and she passed. It wasn't as structured as the first time because she was the only one taking it, but we all did step in and help her. So yeah, I think that's the best thing is just support. It doesn't mean you're a failure. Just like when you take your nursing boards, some people aren't good test takers, there's test anxiety. So you just have to support. And maybe, what I do is I would also show me how you study. What are you doing? Because maybe there's something that you can help them refine, or maybe they're focusing too much on this, and, maybe ask a question a different way to promote that critical thinking so they'll get that answer correctly. That's just what I would suggest.
Deborah,
Yes.
Deborah, I actually didn't pass the certification the first time, and it is very devastating.
Mhm.
But and it was to the point that I didn't even tell anyone that I was taking it, because I didn't want to seem like I was a failure if I didn't pass that.
Mhm.
But just remind individuals that it does not take away from being a great nurse. I'm just not a good test taker at
Mhm.
all.
Mhm.
And just continue to study, and just like Irene stated, just kind of throw different, ask how your studying habits are, and just try to throw certain questions out there. I think another issue with me was I was focused on the real world, what I did every day. And you do things totally different than when the exam asks you a question as to what you do. So I had to learn to separate the two and say, you have to not think about what you do every day, but really what the book actually says, if
Yes.
I'm making sense.
Right. Well,
So
it's the same thing. It's like when you take your nursing boards. If you've had previous experience, if you worked as a nurse's aide before you became a nurse, and you
Right.
find and you did so many things at the bedside, and then you sit down to take your test. You can't think of maybe the workaround you may use or the shortcut you may take. And even though it may be a viable, safe, appropriate shortcut, you have to do what NCLEX wants you to do. And that's how you have to, separate it.
That is so correct.
Right? Right.
Yes. So when I stopped and said, you can't do what you do every day, it isn't wrong, but you have to do what the certification want you to do. And then I was successful.
Well, that's very true. Very, very true. So do all of you work with a lot of new graduates? Or have exposure to a lot of new graduates? No?
No.
We do at the hospital that I'm employed at. We are quite heavy with new graduates. So my work here I found particularly helpful. We're very heavy with them. So they need a lot of mentoring, a lot of shaping, a lot of support. So.
This is Zelda. I really want to thank everyone for their participation. And Irene, we have comments. You are awesome.
Oh, thank you so much. I enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
I really appreciate all the research you did, and we're probably going to be making little cheat sheets and different things from your presentation. So I find that it was very, very helpful. And I hope that whoever is at the forum in Nashville will probably go on over a few little points here and there from Irene's presentation. And Irene, if you're in Nashville, you're welcome to join us at the forum. And we really appreciate everyone taking the time out to be with us tonight. And that's the end of our presentation. So thank you all so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zelda.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.